the best topic of the day, right, why we are all here. And it's glad to see all my participants from the hackathon for tomorrow. I think this is the one speaker that you want to pay an attention to, because we're going to be talking about the standards. Right? What this hackathon, the digitization of supply chain, which is the one industry where the data does not flow seamlessly. There's a tremendous friction, tremendous inefficiencies. Systems don't talk within the systems, and then they don't certainly talk outside their silos. So to that note, we're going to close out this section of our conference today, having Lane here, who's Vice President of American National Standard Institute, known as ANSI. So when we talk about the standards that drives everything we do well, this is the guy. So today he's going to give us a brief understanding of his roles and responsibilities and how that plays into the supply chain. So let's give a big round of applause to Lane. Come on up.
Well, it's going to be hard to live up to all that, but I was thinking that everybody really wasn't here for the hackathon. These are all standards groupies, so shout out to my people. Hi. So seriously, I've had an emotional roller coaster sitting here all day wondering how this was going to turn out, and I know I've only got 15 minutes, but if nothing else, I want to make a point that I think's been established today, and that standards are not only beneficial but crucial and critical. And so hopefully in the time allotted or available, I'm going to march through my slides and give you a few benchmarks on activities in ANSI that are relevant, some tips on standards development, and some current events apropos blockchain in particular. I developed this with a handful of quotes in here to keep it interesting, and most of them were from historical figures, but the one I'm going to start out with, when it's available, is actually something I heard last week. And do I have to open this up, or?
No, I think it's up.
Okay. So, anyway, I can echo the comments about the marching band. I'm actually a Colorado Buffalo, so I empathize with the being on the trailing edge of that sort of things. But I mean, you just can't argue with.
Your groupies.
What's that?
I think you just lost your groupies.
Oh yeah, I wasn't trying to maintain the groupies, so. But I'm glad you took me seriously on that. So. But I mean, you can't argue with a marching band that's got a platinum record, huh? I mean, who doesn't like the Fleetwood Mac? So
Lane, while you're actually queuing up the presentation, why don't you give us a quick.
Okay, here we go. It's gonna work.
It's coming up.
I got to do my first slide. You just got to let standards flow over you, Nick. Oh, now you're going to tell me I brought malware into your system. Standards get no respect, let me tell you. So, but there you go. Case in point. Last week, this is what I get. Standards are esoteric bullshit. How many people believe that? I appreciate your honesty. Yes, political correctness is dead. That's true. But anyway, but I was feeling better about this because about 2 hours ago, a discussion arose, and it became clear to me that there's a rising consensus that there's a demographic of creatures called knuckleheads that are. And so I think this is the kind of thing, but I'd be the first to acknowledge there are people that feel this way. And last year I interviewed a CEO, and he said, "I don't believe in standards." And I was, and as I talked to him, it became clear that he didn't have a definition for standards, and what he really meant was, I like my standards, but I don't like your standards. And so I think it's important to note that standards are beneficial, and if done right, they're not esoteric, because everybody's voice, or certainly all stakeholders are heard, and if they're done right, they fulfill the promise of the subject of the standard, be it a product or process or service or person, and they're not parochial. So enough about that. Now I'll try and blow through the other slides that I was requested to format. I mean, this is essentially a recurring theme at ANSI and the standards community about the technology need and the marketplace demand to create requirements to meet those needs, and the tension between innovation and harmonization for the common good. Here's another quote for you, this time attributed. Commerce Secretary Don Evans, more than a decade ago, said the international language of commerce is standards. I was a little anxious earlier today when John Rosenthal, where's John? There he is. He told you that the language of the supply chain was data, and I couldn't argue with that. So maybe we can reach a consensus that data is the alphabet of the supply chain. And anyway, so. But the point is, for a strong supply chain, buyers and sellers need to be conversant with requirements and expectations and so on. The next slide that was offered had to do with solution technology. I took it as a rhetorical question, kind of, and suggested technology might be the problem, but that's a little too philosophical for the time allotted right now. I did want to say something about, some of you may not know who ANSI is. The American National Standards Institute actually, in 2 years, will be celebrating our centennial anniversary, so I have not worked there the whole time. So, but over the last several decades, what we do as a matter of course, in addition to all the things we do day in and day out, is our mission is to coordinate the voluntary consensus standards and conformity assessment system in the United States. And when emerging priorities arise, we've got a record of doing just that. And going back to the 9/11 Commission support that evolved into the Homeland Security Standards Panel, and nanotechnology solutions, and health informatics technology, which I think is very reflective of what we're talking about here, and electronic health records and so on, so sustainability issues, cyber risk, especially in the financial space, and more recently, electric vehicles and smart cities. So I certainly would suggest that supply chain digitization certainly fits that bill. I was going to say some more about specific efforts I've been involved in recently with toy safety and food safety, but I'll move on with that. But I did, I think these lessons learned would certainly be apropos as the community moves on with regards to the subject today. You won't be surprised that my answer to your template question about a business model would be standards-based, and I won't elaborate on that given the lack of time allowed, but suffice it to say that consensus is simple but not easy, and in the United States we believe on inclusion and accordingly a bottoms-up approach. It's amazing, I won't mention any countries, but in autocratic countries, it's amazing how quickly they get consensus from the top down, you know? So, just saying. I might say a few things, dive deep a little bit here in terms of, we have a United States standard strategy that was created by the ANSI community, and these are the principles, most of which come out of the WTO TBT agreement, and a few people know that port nerd Jeff Weiss is also WTO TBT nerd, so I'll let you answer any questions on this. But anyway, these are serious principles that we hold dear. Transparency with regards to access for everybody, openness and participation, excuse me, impartiality, and certainly precluding dominance by any one person or organization. Effective and relevant in the sense of regulatory needs or technology involved. Consensus, of course, with regards to all those stakeholders affected. A key admonition, and maybe for the hackathon folks here, is in the in the absence of a standard, certainly try to find a solution that's performance-based in terms of looking for the characteristics of the outcome and not the design. Coherence with regards to the absence of conflict and duplication. A due process that allows for appeals of folks that don't necessarily agree after the fact. Technical assistance with regards to helping developing countries come along. Flexibility with regards to methods, technology, and sectors. Timeliness, usually in the sense of absence of what I'd call red tape and administrative impediments, and certainly balance with regards to all interests. Another quote for you. I love Harry Truman, and this is a good quote. It always amused me, though, that he didn't know that, a century before George Santayana had said, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So, anyway, same thing, just in an Ozark mentality. But the point is that, especially in the standards development, that lessons learned are important. So I thought it was interesting, when Aaron and Angus talked earlier about and not necessarily endearingly about living with the EDI standards or the internet protocols, but the point being that work on the priorities and take advantage of the stuff that's already had a consensus achieved as business building blocks for the future. I mentioned the bottoms-up approach in the United States, and in fact, ANSI, the hired help, doesn't develop standards, but we accredit standards developers that do, and there's some 240 plus. ANSI was founded by Department of Commerce and War at the time, and a handful of professional engineering societies, but it's grown since. But the ASTMs of the world and the IEEEs and everything are big developers of American national standards, but there's a lot of more what I call specialty developers, and including the Materials Handling Institute. I just got a report this week that we accredited them, and of course they create standards for containers. We were talking about the box earlier and stuff like that. So there's a lot of knowledge out there on building blocks for any effort you might have that could contribute and expedite your process. So just real quickly, I know I've got 5 minutes left. Some of you may not know, ANSI is the U.S. member to the International Organization for Standardization, and so certainly we're very proud of that, and we dedicate a lot of effort there. But apropos of the standards developers I just mentioned, we acknowledge that ISO is just one of several preeminent international standards developing organizations. But more recently, this new work item proposal from our colleagues down under was specifically about blockchain, and I know you can't read that, but it's a case in point. In April, that was submitted, and as the ISO process demands, they need to document a needs statement, and as you might expect, it talks about the need to support interoperability and data interchange and governance of protocols and knowing your customer, and they suggest a suite of standards with addressing both private and public ledgers, and no standards complete without starting out with terminology, and they suggest, again, to my previous point about lessons learned, leveraging existing vocabulary, and then document the broad range of stakeholders that should be involved, but also making the point that it's not just about the IT community, it's and what's called the Joint Technical Committee 1 at ISO-IC, but other sectors like financial and healthcare especially. And so, as is, again, the process, the ANSI community canvassed everybody for their comment on that, and they had, positive response to the need and to address interoperability, although they kind of hedged their bets with that and said that, due to the complexity, is it even possible to surmount the interoperability problems? And then the negative things, they said it was premature and actually inhibitive to innovation to move forward with this, and you can see the other stuff there. But, and accordingly, the consensus at ANSI was to vote disapproval. But ANSI's just one of 162 members at ISO, so it was passed, and the first technical committee meeting is going to be next spring. But having said that, the technical management board at ISO understands the dynamics, and I think it's subject to their temperance. So that's just a current event with regards to that. So I appreciate the time, and I just, in conclusion, I certainly would exhort everybody to figure out how the ANSI community and USC Marshall can leverage our mutual efforts towards serving what is essentially an emerging national priority. And I think, many, if not most of you in the room are either belong to an organization that's an ANSI member or an organization that belongs to an organization that's an ANSI member, so you might be surprised. Certainly the federal folks from Labor and Commerce are ANSI members. The City of LA is actually an ANSI member. The big companies here, GE, IBM, Intel, Cisco, are all commented on that new work item proposal. And so I trust that this emphasizes my point on the importance of standards and also adds context to the next 2 days' analysis. So acknowledging that Dane was actually the first one to have an Einstein quote today, but this is one I like and essentially hopefully encourages the hackathonists to know that he believed that defining the problem is essentially 90% of the solution. So good luck and thank you for your time. Do I get a football?
You absolutely get a football. It's in the mail. And Ginny is holding the container at the port. Wow. So before I actually deliver the closing remarks, for the conference and then introduce the hackathon rules and engagement, I would like to introduce my colleague, Vyas, who is an academic director for our programs here at Marshall School of Business, both on campus and online. And we talked about throughout the day about the importance of supply chain leaders. Right? I mean, if you think about it, for many of us who's been in this field over 20, 25 years, we were thrown into this. We were not properly trained. We figured things out. Right? It took us, in many cases, 13, 14, 15 years to really understand the global complexity, the trade from sourcing all the way down to the last mile deliveries and customers. Right? The rate by which we're changing the world, you don't have 10, 15, 30 years. So how do we build, in 16 months, a leader who is well-rounded, has a global perspective, understanding of supply chain? Murat will actually come and share about the program background, because I know there are a lot of hackathon, I don't like to call the word hacker, but a lot of participants in our hackathons are here, because hacker is actually like a slang word, right? So Murat, why don't you come please? Let's go round of applause to Murat, who's my partner here, to talk about the program.
Thank you, Nick. What a day. Thank you again for being here. So I'm the academic director for the Global Supply Chain Masters Program, and we want you. So you say, well, what can I do for you? And I say, we want you, your colleagues and friends, but not any colleagues and friends. We want your smartest colleagues and friends, your best employee as a student in our program. You may say, well, I have a full-time job, I have family, I live in the other part of the town or the country, how can I be a student? We have a residential cohort who are full-time students, but we also have an online cohort. And in those online cohorts, students take those courses online on their own time. And the curriculum has the perfect mix of strategy, execution, technology, and experiential learning. So you say, I'll miss that opportunity, I'll just pass that. What else I can do? So I'll say, you can hire from the program. And we have perfect pool of candidates for you. And if you have a position, just send this position to us. We would love to post it on our job portal so you can screen our students. Or we have this Industry Connect network event twice a year. You can send your company representatives so that have a presence in that event and then socialize with our students. This is open for all the specialized master students, not just the global supply chain. And if you go, well, I'll think about that, what else? And I can say, if you have any projects that you want the outside unbiased opinion, or if you have a challenge that you don't have enough resources, just give them to us. And both Nick and I value those experiential hands-on learning, and we would have a group of students work on that challenge for you. And they deliver the best result. And it'll be a win-win opportunity. There'll be great opportunity for our students, and you'll have a good quality solution at hand. And if you say, okay, what else? Well, we say you can be a guest speaker in our lectures. I like to have those industry perspective. We have rich experience in the area, and we like to have this in the classroom. And you can come and speak in our classrooms. You can also speak in our student activities. You can host a group of students as a field trip in your facility. And there are a lot of opportunities. And lastly, and I'd like you to be a mentor to an existing student. And then you have rich experience in the field, and I want you to contribute to the next generation. Thank you.
All right, I pushed Nick away. I had to say something, and I just want to say from sort of a third-party perspective, because I fell into my relationship with USC. Support this group. It really is amazing to be able to look at this crowd. I mean, it's unbelievable to bring people together like this. It really has been, and SC has really stepped up in a meaningful way. Sure, hire people from the program, it's great. We did. Kevin, you step up. Masters in Global Supply Chain Management. Great employee, works well, all of that stuff. But it's actually much more. The center is much more important than that. It's a place to come and think. It's a place to. We live in this supply chain, and I'm convinced that there's a dynamic in this ecosystem which is unlike almost any other. Every day that you go home, you leave work undone. Containers left on here's Vic, tells me every day, he runs our trucking company. He calls me every day and says, shit, left 60 containers behind. Okay, please, don't tell our customers you left 60 containers behind. We don't have any of our warehouse guys here, but we have customers here. We have customers here. Great, okay, screwed that up. Our warehouse guys, they say the same thing. They go home, stuff didn't get done, they work 18 hours, whatever, they get there the next day, there's piles of work. So my point is that this industry is one which is inherently, we're buried in the details. It's rare that we get a chance to get above the trees. And I think I said this earlier, if you don't know where you're going, almost any road will take you there. So it's important to get above the trees. and to think about where we're going, where we're headed, how the industry is going to change, how we make it more efficient, how we do things better than we've done before. And USC for me, has really let us get up above the trees and bring people together and think together and create. So I just want to say that, Nick. I know I wasn't on the agenda, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Just a reflection. We talked about in a kickoff of our conference that we pulled this actually exactly 31 days, right? 31 days ago, 7:48 exactly, and I remember that because I had a 6 missed call after 20 missed calls, and I finally got called through with Jonathan about doing something of this magnitude, right? Having Secretary of State come in, sign MOU. Now, for those of you working in Secretary of Commerce, and having this actually run up the academic bureaucracy, if you will, it takes months to get the MOU through, right? From that execution, I'm sure on the Department of Commerce side, they have their own sort of rules and regulations we have to go through. To executing the signage to now today, having a conference that was attracted by 200 professionals, right? And now with the hackathon, about 196 participants. It's an incredible job. So I can't stand here and say I was the one who did it, right? It takes absolutely a village to pull something of this magnitude together. So I'm blessed to be surrounded by my guys on the team, Eric Chow, Ruth, Katie, Murat, all of those guys. A big round of applause. My partners on the DOC side, I have not seen an organization that is so diligent working together. So Jeff Vyas, Carter, Russ, and many others that you guys were absolutely incredible to execute this together. So thank you. But I gotta tell you, when I founded the center 4.5 years ago, I was blessed because the board not only actually stepped up, but they actually wrote a check to say, you know what, we believe in this, I think this is a good thing. The board members that I have, Jonathan Rosenthal, Jim Soroka, Noel Hasigaba, Clip Kadab, who's earlier moderated the panel, and many others. Raj is here from dependable companies, and many more. I can go on for it. Without your support, physical, financials, as well as being there in helping executing this thing, it is incredible assets. I'm blessed to have you guys a part of my team. Thank you very much. And the last but not the least, why I think when we say connecting the world through network education and advanced research, right? We're not just educating you in this program. We're not just bringing the industry onto the campus. We're not just doing the research to publish the paper. We're creating this ecosystem that creates a thought leadership, the future leaders, and we are going to continue to march on to this. So thank you very much for all the attendees who came and made this event amazingly successful, my speakers, my panelists. Thank you so very much. I know many of you actually flown from other countries, from Copenhagen and other states. It is incredible efforts for you guys to be here and make this event successful. Let's give a big round of applause to those guys. But as we actually close the conference, we began the journey on the hackathon, right? So, and the word hackathon really meant that you're breaking something that has already been created, right? Supply chain is already broken. So you're not breaking anything, you're building something, right? So I just want to make sure that next 24 to 30 hours that you are on this competition, there are 3 things at stake. Check number 1, check number 2, and check number 3. And to get there are things that you're going to do. So I'm going to introduce to you a person who's going to lay out the rules of the game, the next couple of steps in the hackathon, and the journey we're going to take together for the next 24 to 30 hours. So Jeff Musson, please come on up. Thank you for all your work in helping us set this up.
Wow, what a great day today has been, and it's going to get even better. Just by a show of hands, how many people here are participating in the hackathon? Well, okay, the majority of people. Okay, so let me just speed through. What we've decided to do, because our numbers are so large in terms of participants, we've set a limit of 5 people per team. If you already have a team formed, that's fine. If you are still looking for a team, we will allow teams to kind of be formed. So we're going to do a little bit of developer dating. We will call it matchmaking 101. And so ideally, in terms of a team, what you want to have in terms of team members are someone that has a knowledge in terms of a UX, user interface, a business development person on that team, a couple of people that have some coding capabilities as well. Now, here's the interesting thing. As in real life, sometimes team members don't get along, so any sort of non-performing team member, can be released by the majority of the team and voted off the island. So, just be noted of that. The schedule, as you can see, tonight we're really just going to focus on forming these teams. Tomorrow the check-in is at 8 o'clock. At 9, Gene, Nick, and myself will really go through, kind of the regulations, a little bit of a background, talk about the problem statements, things like that. The hacking officially begins at 10 a.m. Teams will work throughout the night, and by the next morning, after you're loaded up on Red Bull and everything else, you'll have your breakfast, and by 10 a.m., your projects are due. And so at that point, we will then shortlist the projects, and finalists will be announced. Those finalists will then present in front of the crowd. As Nick so eloquently said earlier, we've got money on the line here. So there's some real tangible benefits, not only financial, but even more so, you will be at the ground floor of making some very innovative changes to an industry that is really yearning for some change. So you can be one of those stakeholders that can have a very much lasting impression. The other thing that I want to go through is, when it comes to problem statements as well, we will get more into this tomorrow, but I want you to kind of get some ideas tonight in terms of what you've heard today when it comes to what problems and everything you'll be solving. As an example, one task that could be created is a mobile app, for shippers that will, estimate the best time to ship goods by comparing speed versus cost, thereby optimizing that shipment. So what we want to do right now in terms of going through the judging rules just very quickly, you will, as you can see, each team will be given a score of out of 100. Number one, does your technology help to improve the supply chain efficiency, data flow, and reduce congestion? That is the biggest category. What is that problem you're solving? Obviously, security becomes a very much a next sort of milestone to hit. Third thing, does it promote interoperability amongst all the stakeholders? As you heard earlier today, that becomes key. Fourth, does it provide port-specific flexibility where it's not just customized for one port? The fifth thing, does it enable ease of use for the port community stakeholders? As you've heard, it's a real large community. The sixth is solutions, have to be cost-effective and affordable. If the money doesn't make sense, user adoption won't be there. And then really lastly, does it demonstrate a robust fault tolerance, resilience, as an overall, as a problem that you've solved. So that really is the judging criteria. And as you can tell, we've had a bunch of lawyers that put a lot of stuff in small print, but we will print this off tomorrow in terms of the actual rules and making sure no one gets disqualified. And what is also critical tomorrow is we realize that the hackers in this hackathon are very smart, talented people, but you may not have industry-specific knowledge. So we've lined up a stellar roster of mentors that you will be able to bounce ideas off of tomorrow morning, where they will help guide you through what happens in the way things currently happen now. And finally, these are just some tools that you can use. Anything and everything is open to you out there. Some suggestions as it relates to IBM, Microsoft, other platforms, and what have you. So, we will also have the data sets that will be a part of this tomorrow that we'll give out. And right now, what I want to be able to do though is, in terms of those participating in the hackathon, if you guys can meet over here in the next 3 minutes, once we kind of conclude, we're going to segment people into those that have teams. We will get you to fill out one packet per team, and those that are looking to be part of a team, we will help you formulate a team as the reception is going on. So if there's no other general questions or what have you, I think...
Couple of 3 points.
Oh.
So what Jeff mentioned, that we will actually hand out a package which will have all the rules, the background information, and some other critical information that you should know in terms of the data elements. That will be available as a package, one per team. Yeah, I see the hand in the back.
Could there be one-person teams, or do you have to join 5 people?
We would like to have the team consist of 5 people, because it's just such a lot.
Up to 5, right?
Up to 5.
3 to 5.
3 to 5 is actually a team of 1. I would much rather not have a team of 1, because truly it would be next to impossible to really build the front end, the back end, and the kind of in between, unless you are truly the WMS team. Yeah, man, I'm open to that suggestion as well. If you want to crack the code and being a 1 person, we'll make an exception in one case. So the point that I wanted to make, my hackathon team members, as long as you have a ticket attached to your badge, don't worry about the reception, because the conference folks will be actually having a drink and appetizers. Those will still be there. So don't rush out for the drinks. Finish forming the team. Let Jeff and Eric and everybody complete their transaction, because by the end of the day, you should have the team and your team members, and you should know who they are and get to know them, because what's going to happen tomorrow, we're going to hit the ground running. Does that make sense? Any questions for Jeff or I? If not, this adjourns the conference. For those folks that attended the conference, thank you once again very much. The reception is starting. We're going to be outside. For folks at the hackathon participants, your job starts here in